Okay, so hopefully you can all hear me clearly. Welcome everyone to this really timely and interesting event on unpacking ideas around what a University of Sanctuary is. Debordering Practices and Solidarities is the title of today's event. My name's Tahir Zaman. I'm based just across the way at School of Global Studies, where I'm the co-director of the Sussex Centre for Migration Research. And we have today with us an excellent panel, experts in lots of different ways, every single one of our panelists. And we have Professor Linda Morris, Professor of Education, and also the co-lead of the University of Sanctuary. We have joining us online, Bibi Omir, who's a first-year law student and who has a scholarship under the Article 26 Sanctuary Scheme. We also have with us Asma Halimi, who's here, also a first-year law student and a Chancellor's Scholar. And we also have with us Erin Green and Hattie Neville. I forget which one is which. No, I can't. Hattie is a third-year student in international development with the human rights pathway, and Erin is a second-year politics and IR student at the School of Global Studies, and both of them are co-presidents of Student Action for Refugees, STAR, which is an excellent organization for those students who aren't involved. I heartily recommend that you get involved with STAR. They're a great organization. So without further ado, I'm going to pass along to Linda to begin proceedings.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm just going to give a little bit of the global context around refugee education, and then talk a little bit about the UK's hostile environment and how that's impacted on bordering practices within UK universities, but also given rise to solidarity and created spaces of solidarity. And I'm really delighted to be here with my panelists today, who are really, excellent in their different experiences here. So the last decade has witnessed unprecedented speed and scale of migration across the globe. In May 2022, more than 1 million people are now displaced, which is double the number of a decade ago. In 2016, we had the Global Compact on Refugees, which brought together UNHCR, member states, international organizations, civil society, a whole range of actors came together to set a framework or blueprint for how the world should and could respond to refugee situations and this unprecedented levels of displacement. And it very much emphasized the responsibility of the global north in what it called burden sharing. So the Global Compact represents the will and ambition of the international community as a whole for strengthened cooperation and solidarity with refugees and affected communities. And it particularly focuses on the role of the global north and its responsibilities. Higher education for refugees is prominent in the Global Compact and in the UNHCR roadmap, which sets a target for 15% of refugees in higher education and tertiary education by 2030. So currently, if you can see on the slide there, just 5% of refugees access higher education compared to 37% of non-refugees. So participation in education lags behind enrolment of non-refugee students at every stage, but as refugees grow older or are older, the barriers to them accessing education and remaining in education become more difficult. So both STAR and City of Sanctuary, of which Universities of Sanctuary is a stream, have pledged to improve access to universities across the UK as part of the Global Compact. But at the same time, as we've got these global promises of solidarity and increased responsibility of the global north, we've obviously seen these increasingly hostile national discourses across the north. So we've had the closing down of borders, ever increasing walls, containment, violent pushbacks, and the strengthening of things in Europe like Frontex, the EU-wide border and Coastal Guard Agency, And in the UK, obviously, we've got the Nationality and Border Act and the recent illegal migration bill, which is being discussed in Parliament right now. But it's not only territorial borders which have been closing. Over the last 15 years, we've also witnessed a rescaling of immigration control from the national level to the local level. So what have been called everyday bordering practices. So border controls and exclusions are enacted in everyday life and by ordinary people carrying out their jobs and their work are expected to enforce border controls. And that goes for higher education too. And on the one hand, this is creating insecurity and precarity, but it also opens up spaces in which networks of political solidarity, organising and mutual support have emerged. And that includes the growth of the sanctuary movement. So historically, the idea of sanctuary is associated with spatial practices of putting a specific place or building outside of the bounds of the sovereign authority. And its history can be traced back to most major religions. In the UK, the Cities of Sanctuary movement as a coordinated movement has emerged relatively recently. The first City of Sanctuary was Sheffield, which emerged in 2005. But since then, as you can see on the slide, we've now got 108 Cities of Sanctuary and numerous streams of sanctuary. So that's libraries of sanctuary, gardens of sanctuary, sports clubs of sanctuary. We've got over 380 schools of sanctuary and 26 universities of sanctuary, of which Sussex is one. So Sussex was awarded sanctuary status in 2020. And the Universities of Sanctuary movement is a partnership between Cities of Sanctuary, Article 26, which is the forerunner really, and is now part of Student Action for Refugees and Student Action, STAR. So I've taken that quote there from the website, which just says, we are a national network of university staff, lecturers, academics and students. And together we're working to make higher education institutions places of safety, solidarity and empowerment for people seeking sanctuary. Our aim is to develop a culture and a practice of welcome within institutions, the wider community and across the higher education sector in the UK. Now, I think education institutions generally are particularly powerful institutions for social movements to garner influence. It's easier to build social relationships on solidarity and recruit activists in education institutions. So it's sort of capacity building for social movements. And of course, academics have considerable influence in what they teach and how they teach it. So the sanctuary movement and STAR engage in what Rudi Deutsch refers to as the long march through institutions. There's social movements which enter state institutions and provide a service, education, while linking actions to broader social struggles and long-term strategies for change. So we work within and through higher education institutions and strong links with institutions outside of the university. And I think that's particularly important for sanctuary. If you're working within an organisation, within an institution, that you actually have strong links outside which keep you grounded and keep your mission and purpose really focused. So it's a space in which we can challenge the exclusions perpetrated at the scale of the nation state, but it doesn't seek to deny the authority of the nation state. At least in the UK, that's how sanctuary sort of works. So the immigration policies in relation to universities are not challenged in that way, but it does contest entitlements and exclusions. So if we look at the case of universities, we can see how borders have been established over time and how they've given rise to a range of politics which are generative of a more welcoming approach. So when I talk about the HE border, I mean the complex and multifaceted set of policies and practices and processes which are not always tangible. Some of them are very tangible, and the ones I could talk about here are, but they deny access to certain groups. So on the slide there is a sort of trying to capture some of the exclusions and solidarity over the last, since 1998. So in 1998, there we've got Teaching and Higher Education Act, which came into force to introduce tuition fees for home students and reclassified forced migrants, so refugees, anyone with unsettled migration status, and of course overseas students, as international students, making them ineligible for student support and subject to much higher international fees. So refugees and those granted humanitarian protection have access to student finance and home fee status, but only after 3 years of having been here. So immigration status for the first time here becomes a major technology to establish the higher education border, and universities for the first time became sites, well, in a big way, became sites of bordering and the production of different kinds of migrants based on immigration status and a sense of those who deserved a place and those who didn't. Then we have in 2010, the raised tuition fees from 3,000 to 9,000. Poverty is a major barrier for refugees wishing to enter higher education. So any unresolved migration status prevents migrants from accessing student finance, from loans, tuition fees, those sorts of support that's there. We saw a big shift in 2015 in response to 15-16 in response to the Syrian crisis in Europe, where we had large numbers of people coming up through Europe, and the Office for Students there for the first time recognised refugees as underrepresented, which is significant because universities could choose to put refugees and asylum seekers in their widening participation plans and demonstrate how they intended to reach that underrepresented group. And then we've got 2018, a no study condition on certain migrants, preventing them studying while their case was being settled. And then, of course, those two, the Act and the bill that's currently under discussion here. But at the same time, as we've had this presenting of and tightening of borders, we've also had the growth in grassroots movements and solidarity. So under the line there, from the 2000s onwards, we've had a growth in access to higher education campaigns. These are grassroots, migrant-led organisations such as Brighter Futures, STAR, Article 26, Refugee Education UK, all morphing slightly over time and changing and growing and becoming more of a force in this space. And in 2018, we had the Universities of Sanctuary established. So that's a partnership between Cities of Sanctuary, Article 26, and Student Action for Refugees. So what we've seen is a malleability at the same time of borders. So, for example, 2021, the Afghan Warm Welcome Scholarships, British Council Scholarships. So Afghans, the borders shifted and Afghan students were offered or could apply for different scholarships. And then the most significant shifting of the border happened in 2022 in response to Ukraine, where Ukrainian nationals were granted home fee status and access to student loans. So all of these borders and barriers were swept away immediately for Ukrainian nationals, enabling Ukrainian refugees to enter higher education here in the UK. I have to say that those borders weren't swept away for the 760,000 overseas nationals who were studying in Ukraine, mainly from India, North Africa. As you know, the doors across Europe did not open for those groups of students. It was only Ukrainian nationals. But that is quite a significant move. But we see how these exclusionary ideologies produce some refugees as enabled and entitled to cross both territorial borders, visas they could enter the UK, and higher education borders. And I just wanted to end before passing over to Erin and Hattie by looking at the growth in scholarships over the last 10 years, which sort of I think underlines some of what I've said about the growth in this sort of solidarity sense. So this is taken from research by my, oh, sorry, thank you. There we go, thanks. This is based on research by Rebecca Murray at Sheffield University, where she's mapped the number of scholarships. And we see 1 scholarship in 2008, and then 11 in 2011, and that's when we had the Syrian crisis kicking off. Now, 72 higher education institutions currently offer scholarships to people seeking sanctuary. So these university-led initiatives stand in contrast to the increasingly exclusionary and inhospitable environment which is created at the national level by the UK government. So we see how the border has been manipulated over time, and in response to grassroots movements and in reacting to pressures of global events. But there's these exclusionary ideologies based on race, based on nationality, among other signifiers, which remain deeply embedded in our systems here. So that was what I was going to say. So I'm going to hand over now to Hattie and Erin.
I'm just going to be a bit quicker. So I'm going to talk briefly about the ongoing campaigns that Student Action for Refugees as a national charity have been running, before going on to talk about how we at Sussex have been working to educate the student body and raise awareness of issues concerning refugee solidarity. So myself and Hattie have been running the STAR group at Sussex this year. There's been a group here since 2018, but a new volunteer committee is elected every year, which is us this year. And STAR National have been working to build national solidarity at British universities for almost 30 years now through film screenings, fundraising, lobbying, and facilitating volunteer placements. There are 4 main campaigns currently: Equal Access, Families Together, Lift the Ban, and These Walls Must Fall. Each target a different aspect of government policy, which makes life difficult for asylum seekers and refugees. Access to higher education for people from asylum seeking and refugee backgrounds is a huge priority for STAR, and it's something that we're particularly passionate about, as Hattie will go on to explain. The national demands we ask of those in power can broadly be summarised as the need to classify all those seeking asylum as home students for fee purposes, offering scholarships to cover study and maintenance costs, and also the publication of equal access policy to make life easier for applicants in the future. There's still so far to go with all of these points, but owing in part to the lobbying of STAR university groups, there were 10 times as many refugee scholarship places in 2022 as in 2012, which is obviously amazing. One thing STAR does an amazing job of is connecting various groups, i.e. prospective students, current students, university staff, and partner organisations. And this means that immediate work regarding refugee scholarship applications and university applications can be done alongside more long-term lobbying. The life-changing nature of a university education just can't be underestimated, and I'm assuming it's something that everyone in this room has had access to, and it just simply should be something that everyone has access to. Other than education access, STAR campaigns to reunite asylum-seeking families under a really broad and expansive definition of what family means, lift the degrading ban on work for people seeking asylum, and to end the use of detention, which I'm assuming everyone knows. Immigration detention is the only gap in British law where people can be held indefinitely with no indication that a crime has been committed at all. The hostile environment policy, and that dictates these draconian attitudes towards migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees, is a disgrace. And we personally believe that there are no borders which keep us safe, because borders and the violence that they perpetuate make millions of people suffer. And this injustice won't be solved by increasing the hardness of these borders and increasing scaremongering. So because we feel so strongly about this, we at STAR Sussex have run workshops over the last 2 years to discuss freedom of movement, the hostile environment policy, and border abolition as a tool to enact climate justice. And we've found that students really care about these issues. They just sometimes are not aware of the scale of what's happening, and they haven't had the chance to understand these things in a context of British border violence. Through film screenings, performances, and Q&A sessions, we've hoped over the last year to do as much as we can to educate the student body, including ourselves a lot of the time, about migrant justice. The intersections of race, gender, and sexuality have been big interests and big focuses of ours this year. As refugee solidarity and migrant justice opens a really broad discussion, the movement has the scope to draw in a range of students who often realise that the issues that they care about in law, politics, and society are all interconnected. And we know from experience that STAR's a really great place for people to find their feet in activism and solidarity work. We hope to have added to the legacy of refugee solidarity at Sussex with what we've campaigned for this year. And we really want to see the university change for the better with the future hard work of student activism. Because students can make a difference, and they must show this government and its successors that migrants, asylum seekers and refugees are welcome here, and they're welcome in our community.
Yeah, I've got this one. Don't know if people can hear me. Might hold it. Hello. Cool. So I'm going to talk about the organisations we work with in and around Brighton, and that might be that's Star Sussex specifically, and that might be we provide volunteers through the society to them, or it might just be raising awareness about their campaigns and their appeals, or it might be fundraising for them. So the first one is Common Ground, and that's an initiative by Living Vital, who are part of Stanmore Organics in Stanmore Park, and their kind of initiative is to grow organic fruit and veg for refugee families, but they also work really closely with another organisation called Voices in Exile, and they make the allotment a safe space for refugees to come and spend time and also volunteer if they want to. So we've had a few like open days at the allotment and taken students up there and just to show them what they do and provide volunteers through the society. Then we also work with the Hummingbird Project, which is an organisation that works with young refugees. Last year started a raffle for them, and we've mainly advertised their volunteering roles that they have and some of the appeals they've been doing over the year. We also invited them to speak at one of our monthly meetings, just so that students could come and sort of learn who they are and what they do. Then the two other organisations we closely work with are Conversation Over Borders and Brighton Exiled Refugee Trauma Service. So with both of them, it's been mainly providing volunteers again. So BERTS often needs support workers to befriend refugees who are waiting for mental health services and therapy. And Conversation Over Borders need volunteers to do their English speaking classes. So we're always supporting and advertising their volunteer roles. We've also been part of various different demos in Brighton and at the university itself, and that's to try and engage with students about kind of current affairs around refugees that they might not be aware of that are going on in the local area and the university itself. So the first one, I don't know if anyone saw us campaigning on the university, but it was the Mighty Must Fall campaign. Don't know if people are aware, but Mighty is a company that manages Sussex estates and facilities at the university. So this can be anything from security to groundskeeping to cleaning and maintenance. However, Mighty also run detention centres all around the country and profit from detention and deportation. They are actually one of the largest providers of immigration removal centres in the UK. So we feel it's very hypocritical for our university to say it's a university of sanctuary and then partner with such an unethical company. So we have been campaigning to get Mighty off of campus, and there is actually at the moment a survey you can take part in as academics, and there will be focus groups as well, and you can tell the university that you would like Mighty off of campus. So we're hoping that will happen soon. We've also supported other demos around the children who have gone missing from hotels in Brighton and Hove. Again, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but 136 unaccompanied asylum children have gone missing from Hove since July 2021. This is deeply upsetting that this is happening at all, let alone in our local area. And actually a lot more children have gone missing around the UK. So we've been kind of advertising the various vigils that have gone on around Brighton and the demos. We've also attended them and we've spoke at them. So we hope that if there's, if there's any more to come, we will support those and we encourage other people to. And then finally, I will end on something a little more positive. We are really proud of our university for being a university of sanctuary. Thank you. You know, we are really proud that it does give refugees scholarships to come and study here. And you'll be getting to hear about people's stories of that in a minute. But as a society, we are always looking to see how the university can strive to do better and to help more people. And we've seen an initiative in Canada by a group called International Students Overcoming War, or ISO. And they've actually been in touch with us. They're coming over next month. And ISO have set up, it's kind of set up in a similar way that societies are set up in the UK universities. And through some sort of like activism and fundraising, they've been able to create student-led, student-funded, and therefore student-controlled scholarships specifically for asylum seekers that are wanting to study, obviously. So this is kind of different to our model at the moment. There is quite a restrictive eligibility criteria to get the Article 26 scholarship at Sussex. And also there's only 3 scholarships given a year. So we're hoping that we can talk with ISO and learn a lot from them, and either through the society at Sussex or through other university channels, we can start to do something like they're doing and make studying at the University of Sussex a form of safe passage to the UK for prospective asylum seeking students. We're actually holding a workshop around that and with ISO on the 10th of May. So we really encourage as many academics to come because we need your expertise and your support on how this could work here. We also want lots of students to come and show their support and bring their ideas as well. So if anyone does want to come to that, then please talk to myself or Erin at the end. But now I will pass you on to Asma or Bibi. I'm not sure who's going first. But yeah, you can listen to their stories now.
We bring Bibi in first. Yeah. Are you there, Bibi?
Yes, I am here. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so hello, everyone. As you know, my name is Bibi Amir, and I am one of the Article 26 scholarship holder. So my story starts with I moved to the UK at 14 years old from Mauritius with no knowledge of English. I joined Year 10 directly alongside my peers, where I learned English as my first language. And I learned it in 3 months as I needed to catch up with my studies as I joined like high school in the middle of the year. So at the time, I was really enjoying like learning aspects of the British culture, and I was teaching it to my parent and my sibling. Unfortunately, during that time, I was living in a homeless shelter with my family while waiting for the Home Office to offer me and my family temporary accommodation. And I was the main respondent for interviews and my asylum application because I was the only one fluent in English, in which I was attending hours of Home Office interviews monthly, replying to the letters, researching about the responses and the laws that surrounded my situation. And within that, I was managing my studies. I had to be the sole and the responsible person for communicating to the Home Office, as my parents unfortunately did not speak English at that time, and it was a bit harder for them to learn. And seeking asylum and researching the laws around my situation was really new to me because my parents did not speak English, and all knew the information that surrounded our situation, which could have helped us, which like inspired my focus to study law at Sussex. In the course of that time, I had to catch up with my studies as I was about to sit my GCSEs. So while still being in high school, I was responsible for dealing with our application, making sure I was giving the best I could in my studies and making the most of it because again, I needed to make sure I was focused both ways because it was a really important situation, either being sent back to the country I was fearing from. So I successfully got my GCSEs and got a place in a sixth form. However, due to the pandemic, it switched to online learning really quick. And due to my immigration status, I had no means or funds to access Wi-Fi or computer or anything that like was technology wise, because with broadband providers or anything, you need like an official ID, but the Home Office provided us with an application registration card, which was not accepted as an official identification. So it was a bit harder for me to access that. However, I overcame that by going to the library daily and catching up with my lessons, and I became one of the top students of my classes. During that time, I was also facing removal from my sixth form because the Home Office did not provide me and my family with official IDs yet, and that did not show there was no proof for me to show that I was legally allowed to stay in the UK or study in the UK. Fortunately, I overcame this by communicating with my local MP by lobbying, and I received our identification soon enough for my family and I. When the time came for me to apply for universities initially, unfortunately, I found out that due to me being an asylum seeker and my immigration status, I was not eligible to attend university of my own on my own. This was because there weren't loans or finances available for refugees and asylum seekers like me. And because I am classified as an international student, did not qualify for home fee status, which meant that I had to pay 18K per year for my studies. That moment felt really devastating for me because I felt left out compared to my peers, and I was helpless because I could not go to anyone for help or achieve my dreams to study law, and I was working really hard towards it. My sixth form at the time, however, did not provide me with any supported information, as themselves, they did not know any information about asylum seekers or the laws that surrounded them. And I was told that I could take a gap year to get to until I get my decision from the Home Office to restart my studies. That felt extremely disappointing because it felt like as I was stuck in one place and I did not want to miss my opportunities to study. It was a breaking point in my life, as I knew that it was impossible that there would be a change in my outcome in the near future, as asylum seekers do not like get their decision faster, and the Home Office takes times with announcing the decision, and it can take years until I could finally get the eligibility to apply for loans or finances. That held me back really mentally and physically, as I could not afford to pay for my tuition, as asylum seekers do not have the right to work, nor I could start an apprenticeship, which meant that I had no choice but to wait for the decision of my application, which was going to take longer. Eventually, I did apply for the right to work 5 times, with one being rejected last month, as again, asylum seekers do not get the right to work. That worried me a lot because I knew without financial support and already struggling at home, it was impossible for me to attend university on my own or to even move forward with my life. I couldn't ask for financial help from my parents either, because at that time, none of us worked and none of us had the right to work, and we were already struggling at home to make ends meet. But I still did not let that hold me back, and I submitted my university application, which at that time felt really pointless because I did not know what I was going to do. It was extremely disappointing because I felt left out compared to my peers who were moving forward with their studies, and I did not have the equal opportunities or the same opportunities as them. While this was a breaking point in my life, I found out about the Article 26 scholarship that Sussex offered from Student Action for Refugees, STAR in short term, which gave me a lot of information about what I could do with my situation and how I could move forward with my life. This motivated me to to work more harder and achieve my ambition. And I also saw that compared to other universities, Sussex offered a full bursary covering the tuition fees, which was a new chance for me to have a go at my studies and a new hope for me. So initially, the reason why I wasn't able to access Student Finance of England or finance or loans at all was because the requirements of SFE, Student Finance of England, required me to have a UK citizenship or the leave to remain, which I had not yet achieved. And I knew that it was still going to take time for me to get that status. I found out eventually that I was successful in my application for the scholarship from Sussex, which gave me a new start in my life, knowing that I would have the same chance as my peers. However, unfortunately, I still cannot take part in opportunities around the universities to become either an ambassador or take paid roles, either as an extra income or get involved in the activities around, as I still do not have the right to work. However, what helped me in Sussex is the fact that knowing groups like STAR are advocating for more equal and better access for refugees and asylum seekers like me and similar situations like me. Sussex offered me and gave me a new start in my education and helped me belong in a community that I never thought I could be a part of, and feeling that I was safe and part of them. The scholarship as well gave me a new hope and the help that I needed to achieve my dreams to study law, which puts me at ease now that I no longer have to worry about my financial situation anymore or think, how will I continue my studies? So having the scholarship from Sussex really helped me mentally and physically, because I no longer have to worry about anything and everything is covered by them. Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Vivi. Should we move straight to Asma? Yeah. Use the microphone.
Oh, okay. Should I just put it there somewhere? Like this? Can you hear me? Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for introducing, and I'm really delighted to be here in front of you all. My name is Asma Halimi, and I'm from Afghanistan. I was born and raised in Pakistan as a refugee. My family moved to Pakistan and we lived there for a very long time until I finished my high school. One day, my friends were applying to start their college degree, and I was also excited to start the same journey and embark on this journey. However, the reality was different. My path and their path was not the same because I was a refugee. Majority of the universities in Pakistan at that time did not have access to refugees, and very few that had access were hardly affordable. At that time, it was very difficult for me as a young girl to see my friends starting their academic journey, but I had to wait for a very long time. However, I did not give up. I started to apply for jobs. I was very young, but even now I cannot believe that I was able to secure a job to find earning for my degree. And at the same time, I tried to look for scholarships. At that time, I did not understand what refugee mean until I get through very difficult situations and I face a lot of struggle to just get into university. Finally, I was able to secure a scholarship, and as well, I was doing job part-time. I started my education and I was able to complete my education. Fast forward, after some time, I decided to go back to my country, Afghanistan. I wanted to contribute towards peace and stability of my country in my own capacity, of course. I was able to secure a job with the United Nations Development Program. I work in different projects, and as well, there were some projects that I was involved, which aimed at supporting internally displaced Afghans. It was really a great opportunity for me to help my people. During that journey, I felt like I needed to study law to help migrants and refugees, and to help other people who are deprived of fundamental rights, and to help them who face the same kind of struggles and difficulties and challenges like me. At that time, I applied at Sussex University. I was really excited and I was waiting for an answer. The day came when I opened my email and I received an unconditional offer. I was really happy and excited. I cannot express my happiness the day I had. I applied for a visa and I bought some clothes. I was like Googling every time, like Sussex University. I I was trying to search the campus and everything. I was so happy. I was able to get a visa and I tried to pack my bag. Everything was ready. I was ready to start my journey and come to the University of Sussex. However, a few days before my departure to UK, the government of Afghanistan collapsed and Taliban took over the country. And my dream felt far away. It was unreachable because it was a chaotic moment. Nobody was able to leave the country. The commercial flights were banned. I did not have access to my bank account. People did not have access to their bank accounts and to their cash or anything. It was a very chaotic moment. At that time, I was really sad and I was desperately trying to find a way to come to the UK and start my education. After some time, I was evacuated to France. I had very little choice in that as well. And everything happened so quickly that I left my clothes, my bag, belonging, house, money, and I had to take a backpack and just my laptop and a phone. I was automatically put in an asylum seeking procedure. That means I was not able to come to the UK that year. I had to wait 1 more year. It was very challenging and it was really difficult situation. I would like to thank University of Sussex as University of Sanctuary, especially Eileen Laughlin, who is part of the University of Sanctuary or team member of University of Sanctuary. From the point the government of Afghanistan collapsed until I reached Sussex, she was in constant contact with me. She provided different services and support. Also, psychologically, it is really encouraging to know there is someone there to help you, to support you, and to reach out to you. I was able to ask questions. I was able to raise concerns. Apart from that, I had secured Chancellor Scholarship for my first year, which was not deferable to the next academic year. With the help of Sanctuary team, I was able to defer my scholarship to the next academic year. That was very helpful. That was like £15,000. For me as a refugee, it was a lot of money. I could not afford it. The University of Sanctuary team took care of every process. They tried to contact different offices and departments to defer my scholarship, to reach out to the accommodation and everything. Everything had to be deferred to the next year. And they just kept me informed about the good news. This was one of the support of many supports that the University of Sanctuary provide. I don't know what would have been happened if University of Sussex was not part of University of Sanctuary. I think I would have not received the same help. And I would have left behind. When young people are deprived of educational rights, their communities are also deprived of sustainable future. University Sanctuary's support or help was a big deal for me to achieve my dream coming to Sussex and studying my law degree. As someone who has faced difficulties at first hand as a refugee, for me, Sanctuary means support, inclusivity, and safety, and a welcoming environment for everyone, free from discrimination, not on based on someone's identity or if someone is a refugee, they are not welcome. My hope is if University of Sanctuary could expand their support on the scholarship, not only for the home student refugees, but also refugees from other countries. Because I am a refugee from other country. And I would like to thank them very much. And thank you so much for listening to my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you to all the panelists. There was some incredibly powerful testimony from both Bibi and from Asma on the challenges of accessing and indeed progressing through the UK higher education system and helping kind of shed light on the significance and the importance of the sanctuary movement, the broader sanctuary movement, not just the University of Sanctuary, in the context of the hostile discourses and practices that Hattie and Erin were speaking about that come from the state, and how this kind of broader sanctuary movement actually opens up the possibility of encountering or opens up spaces of encounter where we get an opportunity to learn to learn about what it means to live with one another's difference. And I think that's so valuable. So these are important spaces of refuge that we're talking about. So we have about 45 minutes now, and we can open up for some questions and answers from the panelists. So if there are any questions from the room, I think a mic will be moving around. Just raise your hand, and can I just ask you to introduce yourself and sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think there's a hand up there.
Really? Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi. Oh, sure. Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm happy to hear the story of your story and the
Thank you.
opportunity of how we can help or communicate with the refugees. So that's many out of the project. So I'm happy to know that. So my question is about the training for the teacher side. I know in UK system, not only UK system, the teachers have some difficulty to know how they can teach to the refugee student. And host student also don't know how we communicate with refugee children who has some difficulties, difficult background. So is there any help for host school or host community to help to know how to adapt new refugees who just came to the UK or that's my question.
Thank you. So what was your name?
In ideas.
Sorry?
Haruki.
Added. Okay. Is Bibi still with us? I think that might have been a question that Bibi could have answered.
Yes, I am still here.
Bibi, did you hear that question?
Could you repeat it again? Because it was really, from my side, it's really slow. I can't hear it properly.
All right. So from your side, what kind of difficulties you face in the local school in UK? About the teachers action.
Okay, so I would say the fact that none from where I've come from and from where I was studying, none of the teachers or anyone knew how to help me or about my situation, which I felt a bit left out about because, again, no one was there to help me or provide me the information that I needed or the support that I needed that time because they did not have the knowledge about what was going on or what was the situation of an asylum seeker in general. So, yeah.
Thank you, Bibi. Perhaps Linda, do you have any broader comments to say about how support for secondary education
Well,
professionals works?
well, only through schools as sanctuary and colleges as sanctuary, because that is one way that teachers and schools can become aware of these issues, because it's not part of teacher training, how you manage people in these unusual situations. So yeah, that's all I'd say.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions?
We have a question from
Oh.
our online audience.
Oh, we have one online.
So it's a question from Anne. She says, hi everyone, well done on organising such an informative and inspiring event. My name is Anne. I am a PhD student, also a charity worker, supporting refugees who live in London. I've been trying to contact Star Network regarding research that could be of interest to the network. But unfortunately, no one's replied to the email. I'll have to get in contact. I'll send this to you afterwards. I'm very sorry. Yeah. If there's any other questions online.
It's just us two running it, so.
Whereas I'll forward you the information afterwards.
Okay, yeah,
If
thank
there's any other questions online, please do put them in the chat.
Yeah, I think there's a question there.
Thank you very much. It is very informative and very moving. So thank you very much. I really want to continue with the discussion before about exactly those links, because if Brighton is a city of sanctuary, and then Linda, you talked about the schools and the colleges, then obviously finance is a key issue. But also the stories show that the regulations and the processes and the online and the border that exists online in English, unfortunately, is very complicated. And I just wondered if you could say more about that, all those connections, because if asylum seekers sometimes take 8 years to finally not even get refugee status, they get, say, 5 years settlement, and therefore there's a right to housing, and they can get a job, not just a niche shortage jobs, which is another ridiculous term. But then if it seems very important that the schools and the colleges know what those processes are, so they can actually shape and really help asylum seekers and refugees to then come to the university. So I just wondered if you could say more, because obviously you're all very well connected, but exactly how that helps to literally ensure that someone gets to Sussex, who probably is home, living in Brighton or East Sussex. So I just wondered if you could talk to that. Sorry, long-winded.
Linda, would you like to take that one?
I kind of feel there were two things there. One is this pathways to access into higher education. And there's a certain amount that universities can do, but actually, Bibi's story, I mean, she arrived in the UK and she worked incredibly hard, and she got herself to that benchmark where then she could apply for and access higher education. But a great many refugees, but the point they arrive, they have so much catching up to do in the language and the education, that we need more pathways, and those pathways need to be better publicised to enable people and better support through systems. Age 18, refugees, like, citizens, become aged out of education. Their entitlement to full-time education ends. So that's really problematic, because how do you get to be at these sort of benchmarks where you can get into access to higher education? So it's that non-traditional or alternative routes that we need to be working on and supporting in colleges to get people into university. And the other thing that you mentioned is the unsettled status, which can go on for years and years. As Bibi's story is one of waiting in limbo with her family, still unable to work, having arrived here many years ago, and that's a Home Office kind of context. But it also reminded me of your story, Asma, when you're talking about you've got family members in France,
Yeah.
who are stuck in France and can't actually.
My sister, she's not able to. Yeah, so my story, so different. I feel like my parents and my sister, they're in France right now. My sister, she was like third year medical student, but now she's in France and she cannot like study medical in France because she has to start learning language, like French language, and then she will be able to start her medical journey. Even by that, by learning language, I mean she has to like spend 3 to 4 years to get like, I think C or something, C1 or C2, and then she will be able to start her medical journey, even though she has already completed three years in English. And therefore I was hoping if there was any opportunity for Afghan refugees as well to be considered for some kind of scholarships in the UK or maybe at the University of Sussex, because there are many people who can speak English. It's easy for them because we do study in English, and we do have some subjects in English, so it's easier for us. But French, we have never studied French, like it's something we never thought about it. So yeah, and there are a lot of people who dream to study at Sussex, but right now, because there are very less opportunities for them to apply for, and there are some requirement restriction that you cannot apply to certain, not certain, like many scholarships because we are not eligible. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a question there.
So this is a thought that I was hoping maybe to develop with you guys. And it speaks to the points that Asma, you made about the low number of scholarships in Sussex, only 3, which is, we should be so ashamed of ourselves, honestly, so ashamed, 3. And I wanted to connect this issue of financing. I think there's a possibility for student activism around this. And I want to connect it to the issue of democracy within the university. So at the moment, the Vice Chancellor is asking the university to reorganize into faculties. And what they're going to do is they're going to impose another layer of bureaucracy in the university and at an executive pay level, which means a lot of money is going to be spent paying these people to do jobs that in other countries, you're not imposed on the faculty, you're democratically elected within your faculty, and it's a service job, not a job of I am your boss and I receive a huge salary. So what I have asked, and I'm hoping you guys maybe might do the same thing, is to push within Senate and to push within council where students have a voice to say this layer of bureaucracy, if it is imposed upon us, shouldn't be unaccountable. It should be democratically elected. And that money that they were going to spend on that layer of bureaucracy should be set aside for refugee students and scholarships. I think it's a real possibility. I know that senators would be really behind this. I know that UCU as a union would be really behind this. And it's literally connecting the idea of the lack of internal democracy at the university to refugee rights and financing. So a thought for you guys to think about.
I think that's a great shout, actually. I mean, one of the slides that Linda had put up showed that where there's political will, there is a way. Ukrainian refugees were granted home status and access to student finance. So why can't that just be the norm? You know, so I want to actually come back to the point that you were just talking about there in terms of access to higher education, and wondering whether more can be done about broadening access through foundation years, and making that a central pillar of what the University Sanctuary does. Because the commitment, even for a foundation year, probably isn't for the full length of the degree. So for the university to kind of accept larger numbers of people who, when they arrive, as Asma was saying, their qualifications aren't recognized. So having at least a level 3, I think it is, a foundation level qualification from an accredited university would be something. That's enough me talking. There's a hand up here and over by the far side.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jay. I currently teach at the Sociology Department and the International Development Department, but I've completed my PhD at IDS, and it was one of the themes that I looked into was refugee integration. So thank you so much for all of your talk today. It was so inspiring, and I learned a lot more, especially being at IDS. You do focus a lot on outside of the UK, when there's so much that is going on in the UK that we could start to get really interested in, which links up to a lot of the themes. I actually have a number of questions. The first question I have to Linda is, I don't know if this is relevant, but is the UN Global Compact on refugees, that they talked a lot about these alternative forms of routes of asylum, and higher education is one of the, could the UK's obligation under the UN Global Compact could be used to sort of enhance the activities that University of Sanctuaries are also doing, and could that be sort of a space for the government to change maybe its attitudes? I'm not really sure about that. And one other question I had, and I don't know who to ask this, and I find it really interesting that, well, first of all, Bibi and Asma, all of your stories were really inspiring, but I'm really curious that both of you have decided to major in law. And I find this really interesting, and there's two sides of it. And I really loved the fact that both of you wanted to make change in the world, and law is quite powerful in order to do that. But at the same time, when selecting scholars of Sanctuary, is there some sort of an expectation of that level of social responsibility, I guess, on the scholars? Or could they pursue any discipline that they want to, like, in the arts, or, something that's unrelated to the social activism? And, how do you feel towards that? It's like a very open question. And the final question I had for Bibi and Asma is that for both of you, I think the legal and the financial support were quite crucial in getting to a lot of these things. But aside from that, which are quite important, and it was quite instrumental for you to be where you are right now, but are there any other things that the community or the society can improve on that is not just related to legal and financial? Like, how do you feel integrating into, and I don't really want to use the word integration, but like into the society? Are there anything that you would like to see better, or some more expectations you have from your peers or people that you meet, or the general public in the UK, or things like that? So.
Okay, 3 questions there. So if you can remember them all. Bibi, would you like to go first, and then Asma?
Sure. Would you just go over the first question for me, please? Sorry.
So the first question, I think, was more towards.
That was for Linda.
Oh, sorry.
So Bibi can just choose your question.
Yeah. So the first question was more for Linda, but then I think the second question, I guess, also, I mean, you could choose to answer about, whether scholars of Sanctuary could be, not just expecting to do a study that is related to something that has to do with, your background, or wanting to see the society changed or something, if you have something to say about that. But I think the focus of the question for you, and also Asma, is that what are some of the things that you would expect from the society, or the community that you belong to as a whole, that could change and better be receptive, or I don't know, accommodate diversity and different backgrounds and all of that. I just probably expanded my
Okay, Bibi, there's a 4th question for you now.
Okay, so I'll start with the society one, like what can communities do better? I would say is raise more awareness, because currently, like, I'm in Manchester. Ever since I moved here and I started high school and everything, no one has the awareness about what is actually like the whole like what does refugee and asylum seeker and what does it cover, what does the label cover, and what they have to go through. So I would say more awareness, because currently in the media it's like more prioritized towards negative like portrayal towards asylum seekers and refugees, which does not help a lot. And whenever like you try to discuss a situation, it tends to come like to a worry that would you be accepted in the community or no. So I would say more awareness be raised around the community, and support as well, like more acceptance, I would say.
Asma, do you have anything to add?
So I would like to answer like why I chose law. So as I mentioned before, my whole journey, I feel like since I was raised in Pakistan, well, we did not have access to many things. For example, education. We were not allowed to open bank accounts. And again, same, like we were not able to get like higher position jobs. Even my first job I started was an assistant teacher, very young age. And so on. And I saw like there were other refugees, Afghan refugees who were like living around the community, and them as well, like they did not had access to education, and I felt like they were left behind. I felt like they didn't have access to their educational rights, fundamental and basic rights, and same for myself. And again, when I went to Afghanistan working with the UN and everything, so I thought maybe I should study law and so I can help people. So I better know about the rights and about the educational rights, and so I can fight for people and yeah, for Afghans. And for the other question is that right now, maybe some of you are aware, like Afghan girls are not allowed to go to school and university. University is fully banned. So I want to be their voice. I want to advocate on their behalf. And that's why this Sanctuary Scholarship really means a lot to me. If one Afghan can get or become educated or get the education, they can educate like the whole community and society. It really matters. I was the first girl in my home that I went to university. My sisters, they did not attend the university. That was mainly because I never give up. I was always like, no, I can do it. I will do it. I waited for a very long time until I started like joining university. It took me a very long time, but it was okay for me because I knew that someday I will be able to complete my education. So for me, it's the awareness raising, just like Baby said, and a positive message that refugees can be the future and they can contribute to community and society positively. Thank you.
Linda, would you like to take a question from Jay on the Global Compact?
Yeah. Yeah, so today we focus pretty much on the local, on the UK, but there are some really exciting initiatives going on in UK higher education about alternative routes and about university corridors. So, for example, King's College have resettled a family. They've offered a scholarship and a family, and then they've fundraised to support that family to resettle in the UK through a scholarship. And I think those sorts of models are the ones that we've started exploring here at Sussex, and the alternative and complementary pathways, and looking at providing higher education or supporting universities in conflict affected areas. So, for example, twinning, those sorts of things to help. I wanted to go back to the finance of all this though, because we mustn't forget that this overseas student fees, which is one of the biggest barriers, is a cross subsidy of universities. That's what we use to cross subsidy our home fee students. It's presented, it's a model. I listened to Adam Habib at SOAS University, and he reckoned that the markup on a international PhD was 500%. So he said, we're charging overseas students, international students, 500% more for their PhD than we actually need to deliver the PhD. And then that's being done on a model of social justice. So we're taking people from the poorest parts of the world and charging them most to support our university system. So there is a fundamental inequality that's there, the elephant in the room, in fact, how I think in terms of when we think about alternative pathways and how we can support things. So it's that model that also, at the same time as what we're doing, needs to be challenged. And this subsidy, I'd say. And I'd just say on the scholarships are open to anybody. The system is refugees apply for or asylum seekers apply for a course at a university. If they're offered a place, then they can then apply for a scholarship. And at Sussex, it's open to anybody, even a foundation year. You can apply for a 4-year degree during a foundation year. The only degree that you can't do at Sussex is a medical degree on a scholarship, because I think they're so expensive that the university won't do this. So.
Thank you. James, I think the gentleman behind you has a question.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Campling. It's the first time I've ever been here, actually, so very exciting to be here, and a really inspiring series of talks from you. So I'm very glad I came. I've been working in development education for the last few years. Before that, I was a teacher, and I'm hoping to be studying for a PhD soon, and I'm just in conversation with Joe Westbrook about that at the moment. And it would be about access to primary education. But there's quite a lot of similarities, obviously, with access to higher education, as well as many differences. Probably one of the key similarities is the sheer scale of the challenge, with 60 million primary school children with no access to school at the moment. I don't know what the numbers are for refugees, but I'm sure it's very high. I'm just wondering if meeting the challenge of scale is seriously going to come about through the scholarship program. Of course, the scholarship program is very inspiring and very worthwhile, but the sheer numbers of refugees, and by far the majority of whom are stuck in refugee camps, I just wonder if there's other ways and other initiatives, I'm sure there are, but I don't know about them, that are going on to actually bring education to those people, rather than the unrealistic expectation of them being able to somehow access the very high quality of education in places like this. So I guess my question is, given what we've learned from things like COVID and the potential for distance learning, the potential for use of technology, are there those initiatives taking place to really increase and accelerate the access to higher education that won't necessarily come about through something like the scholarship program?
It's a great question, and I think it's one that I can actually answer as well. So one example of the kind of thing that you're talking about, Peter, is I've been working very recently with the Council for At-Risk Academics, CARA, long-standing sort of NGO that's done work with exiled academics, and the realization that they've come to in the context of Northwest Syria was that actually we need to be supporting the institution building of universities, higher education institutions in those complex emergencies, in those conflict-affected situations. And the trouble is, when oftentimes people are displaced, and when they're displaced for lengthy periods, it's because of conflict, right? That when conflict enters into the equation, the duration of exile extends. It's like averages more than 17 years, right? So you have generations that don't have access. And where there's conflict, there's contestation over sovereignty and who's responsible for assuring quality of education. So in the case of Northwest Syria, there's no one organization that can guarantee the quality of higher education. And in the world of globalized education, how does an institution maintain and sustain itself? So we've been working with an institution in Azaz, which is just across the border from Kilis in Turkey. And it's part of Aleppo province. It's where the earthquake struck recently. And this is, they had 10, 12 years of war followed, and like constant bombing by the Russians, aerial bombardments and so on as well as the Syrian regime, followed by the earthquake as well. How does an institution like that maintain itself? How does it keep its academics? How does it convince them to keep working there? There's only so much that they can say, I want to give back to my own people. Reality takes hold of them. They start thinking about the future of their own children and possible migration routes for themselves. So how do we maintain that? And I think that question really comes back to really what I think is, what does it mean for us to be a university of sanctuary? As you said, the vast majority of people who are displaced or who are refugees are in the global south. They're not, contrary to what Robert Gendrick might say, they're not crossing on small boats. That's not what's happening. Over 90% of people are in the global south. So in this context of globalization, how do our institutions act as global actors? I sit in the School of Global Studies. What does it mean for global studies to be part of a university of sanctuary when we're not really kind of working across borders in that way? So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done about thinking about, and Asma was saying, it's really important. One person gets educated in the community at that level, it has profound consequences for that community, like positive repercussions. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around thinking about how we do that, whether it's twinning, whether it's sharing processes. The thing that we've been working on recently is, in lieu of there being an accrediting body, we've been making sure that this particular institution has processes in place that, were they to be audited and and to be seen whether they're doing things in the right way, their governance processes and structures are working as they should be. And I think there's lots that we can do, particularly in relation to the nature of a lot of the research that goes on vis-a-vis the global south. It's us who go out there to do research on, really on, not with, we say with, but a lot of the time it's us dictating what's going to happen in this research project in that part of the world, rather than working in true collaboration and in partnership. So I think there's so much that can be done about thinking about how the University of Sanctuary can extend beyond borders and challenge borders. And the everyday bordering that we see here, is produced elsewhere as well. So we think it's tough here. Like Asma says, go to Pakistan, it's super tough. It's something that needs to be thought about. There's a hand up at the back.
We also have two questions online.
Oh, yeah, please, James, sorry.
And then we
Thanks.
can come to the back. So a question from Nick. He asks, what can universities be doing to support refugee background students into careers after graduation? And should universities of sanctuary develop its work for the future? And also a question from Alec, a question for the STAR reps. What's the best way about going about setting up a STAR group at a university? How do you generate interest and momentum?
Do you guys want to take the STAR question?
Sure. So luckily we didn't have to do that. That sounds like a lot of work. But I know that STAR National have a lot of information online, and they quite regularly set up groups at universities. They have a really, really good support system.
Yeah, they've held our hand all the way, haven't they? They're really good, and they are really desperate for new universities to have a STAR group, so they would jump all over that. So they'd definitely be a first point of call. I think they were trying to get us to set up one at Brighton University. We've got too much going on at Sussex University, so they are really keen for more groups, so they would definitely be.
Yeah, if you just on the website, there's a tab. I have memorized the website off by heart. There's definitely a tab about how you can set up your own STAR group, and you can email everybody there.
Linda, would you like to take a question from Nick on pathways after university?
Well, thank you, Nick. I mean, it is it is an issue. You know, refugee background students do tend to struggle more in the employment market than other undergraduates. And I don't know what, you know, universities do offer support, but I think there's more that could be offered there. And I think it's also, it's a question globally, I think, in terms of education. I mean, it sort of relates to the question as well that we had before about what about overseas? What are we doing overseas? And there are a number of initiatives about connected learning, digital, offering degrees overseas. But very often these aren't done in partnerships. They're not done with people on the ground. And at the end of those, there is no employment for the refugees who've done those, those courses. So I think it is about working in partnership with communities and with employers and making sure that university degrees fit, and universities providing specific support around refugee background employment. I mean, there's a lot of groups that do struggle to get employment after university, not just refugees, but I think there are specific issues, particularly if they're still with unsettled status and they don't have a right to work. I mean, that's, you know, we go back in the loop.
I think this is an answer to Nick's question, but I think one possible not model, but something that we can learn from is the Living Wage campaign. So like the Living Wage campaign was started by London citizens, I think it was originally, and it's got to a point where it's so mainstream, right? You know, the mayor of London, municipalities, councils up and down the country, the government, you know, universities, everyone's jumped on the bandwagon of being accredited as a living wage employer. Now, if something similar could be organized to think about, you know, outcomes after university in relation to sanctuary, perhaps that's something that could be thought about as well. There's a question at the back there, lady with the black sweater.
Thanks. Oh, first of all, I just want to say that how actually the kind of our positioning or our situated positioning shapes our what we want to do, our professions, like Asma said, lawyer, and in Kurdish geography, where I come from, every person that grew up with me, we all wanted to be lawyer, because precisely the injustices that we face every single day, the kind of injustices that Asma has faced in her settings as well. So we have an army of lawyers now in Turkey that is from, and it's true, this is by the way, but I think my question is really to Linda. I was, and perhaps I'm sorry, I didn't come at the beginning. I was in the other meeting, Global Studies, but I wanted to reflect on the kind of work that you've been doing with the University of Sanctuary, to really elaborate or maybe talk about what does this tell about the notion of solidarity and kind of the process that you were talking about, the network, right? The networking and doing research and everything, and how that kind of work that is shaped up our understanding, but also our practice of solidarity. That is what we're doing is not just a charity and is a kind of helping some souls and kind of in the development world, the helping white, you know, the white saviorism and everything going beyond that, and how that kind of shaped our notion of solidarity, and also how that practice, being engaging and being with these people and learning from their stories, which is extremely powerful, have shaped your own work. And what, you know, what are the tools and strategies or mechanisms you've developed to not just help, but actually talk about some of these issues that they're facing extremely structural, material, that is caused by global injustices. Thank you.
Over to you.
Well, Tahir, I was going to say your work with Northwest Syria, in Northwest Syria with Kara, is a really good example of solidarity in practice, I think. I mean, it's come from a very grassroots, bottom-up way of working. And I think the stuff that STAR does is also, you know, a process and way of working in an example of solidarity in practice. So I'm going to defer to people who have got more to say, I think, on solidarity.
Okay, so do you guys want to talk about what solidarity means for you at STAR?
So many offers. Yeah, we can go.
Well, I just think your partnerships that you're so engaged in outside, I think that's a really
Yeah,
important.
I think something I was saying about was that all the students we've spoken to really deeply care about refugee issues, and they care about all of the things that we've discussed today, but they just sometimes don't realize how deep they go and how many people are affected, even in Brighton and Hove. And then when they make the connection that actually a lot of people that they might bump into at uni even are affected by these things, they realize that, you know, migrant justice is a very real issue that they can care about, and that the work that they study at uni applies to.
I think also we do have a tendency to be in a global studies bubble at the University of Sussex. And I think a lot of us think, oh, everybody knows this stuff. But even in global studies, there were, I mean, I know you can't learn about every single thing, but there were so many people that came to us about situations we'd never even heard about. And it, like, I think every time we just got really angry that we hadn't been taught about it, or that we didn't know about it, and that we were the only ones talking about it. And that was really like difficult. So I think it's just, it is that advocacy. It is like having conversation, like to me, solidarity is like having those conversations with everybody and anybody and going, oh, did you know? Like, I don't even know how many people know that Sussex is a university of sanctuary. Like, it's just, we're all kept so separated, and we're all like these different teams that are all doing things, but actually like not coming together that much. And so you really don't understand how many people know about something and how many people don't. And I think, yeah, global studies becomes this bubble where we think everybody knows, and the rest, there's so many other schools at the university and so many other people that we could reach. And I think it really is just having conversations constantly and just going out there and having it with everyone and anyone. And that's what we do on a very small scale in a society, is we put on events so that we can talk to people about it. And it's just doing that, but ramping it up basically.
Yeah, I think the point about advocacy is an important one. I was like on the way here today, I was listening to the radio, and Robert Jenrick was trotting out the myths, and he was like saying that these, like, he was making these claims, and I'm sure they've not been tested, right? So first one was everyone in England, not everyone, he said many people in England believe that the small boats are an issue. Thinking, anyone done any research on that? You know, I mean, as being at a university, it's our job. We should be like testing these claims, you know. Is that actually an issue, or is that just Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman just having a cup of tea and deciding that, you know, small boats are an issue? And he went on to say, people are concerned that these migrants who are coming over on the boats are settling in our large cities, and that's going to undermine cohesion. And I thought, again, have you been to our large cities? You know, it's not going to undermine cohesion because nobody would notice it. Everyone lives with difference in the larger cities. And the third one that he claimed was, and this was like a rule, like if the others weren't a dog whistle to the far right, this one like really capped it. He said migrants are intrinsically, about making these short crossings across the channels, they intrinsically hold different values from the rest of us in our society. And again, you think like, let's just ask a few people. Let's go to you know, some of these towns on the Kent coast and actually find out how the people in Kent feel. I'd be happy to wager that they don't feel the same way as Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick. So advocacy is super important. Solidarity as researchers, this is like, we have to think about what we can do in the positions and the roles that we have. And I'm very privileged. I work at a university. It wasn't always this way, you know, but having got here, I think, okay, how can I use my research? And for me, when I'm thinking about designing research, I'm thinking about how do we move resources around so that it's not really all just sat in front of me, but in other places that it can make a difference. So for me, that's where I think solidarity lies. It's about kind of recalibrating the resources that you have at your disposal. So it can make a difference in some way or another. How are we doing for time? I think we're done. It's 5:30 on the dot. The conversation can continue. I'd like to invite everyone to give a warm thank you to our panelists there, BB online. Thank you very much. Oh, closing remarks. There are a couple of closing remarks I have to. So the recording of this is available on the IDS website and an email to all the attendees as long as you share the details with us. So please share this this event with your colleagues who couldn't make it. The next Sussex Development Lecture is in 1 week's time. It's called Laboratories of Learning, Solidarities, Education and Knowledge Making in the Global South. I think that'd be a nice follow-up to today's.
Mario.
Okay, great. Yeah, perfect. We should, yeah, all attend that. So you can register your place online or in person and on the IDS website. Thank you.